Welcome onto the podcast. And today we have Blandon Leung from New Zealand, owner of iRefi. And so, Blandon, why don't you introduce yourself, tell the audience who you are and what do you do?
Yep. Thanks, Jonathan. So my name is Blandon Leung, as Jonathan mentioned, and we run a mortgage firm out in New Zealand. One of the top performing ones actually in this country. We basically help clients with financing options on properties. So that's the main gig.
Right, and hence the name iRefi, right? iRefinance.
Yeah. So normally, if you have a mortgage, you realize that every year or two, you might come up for a renewal. And that's when you try to figure out whether or not you can get a lower interest rate. And a lot of the time, people get lazy, but it might make sense to figure out, okay, whether or not there's a better deal at another bank. But more importantly, maybe figure out whether or not there are options for you to, pay off the mortgage faster through like a restructure, a refinancing. Or sometimes people might decide to, okay, you know what, I want to visit this property investment journey, check it out and see how they can do it. And actually, a lot of our clients are property investors. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, how old are you, Blandon?
Currently 31.
31, right? And so you started this business from scratch with several partners, correct?
Yeah, so just a bunch of guys, almost 6 years ago now, 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago, 2015, September. I've been working for a couple of years, and the guys been sort of just come out doing their own thing as well. And we met up in a cafe. It was an introduction from one of my friends from church, actually. And he said, "Oh, man, you got to go meet these guys. They're like," he felt like you guys got the same energy. Like he basically said, you guys got the same energy, like same vibe, and looking like you guys are doing the same thing. And we sat down, and they were doing like a software for brokers. So what they were doing were they were creating a software to create referrals. But the good brokers, they're already getting enough referrals. They don't need a software to do that. And the bad brokers, no matter how good the software is, it's not going to create more referrals. So the software wasn't too good, working out too good for them. But what happened was, to generate more revenue, they were actually marketing for these brokers online. And they did that very well. Like they generate a ton of leads, and they felt like, these brokers don't know how to close these internet leads, because it's slightly different, like someone coming out from the bank, they're more reactive, right? They want to, like, if you come from a corporate, you're more used to inbound, like someone coming to you and say, "Hey, look, I need this. What should I do?" But nowadays the internet leads are slightly different, and it requires you to be more of an outbound caller. And so they felt they could do better. And at the time I was working in a firm, and I started doing door knocking, ringing the yellow page. Yellow page is like the phone book, and kind of booking appointments from the yellow page. So, I did tons of calls in my first year. Well, first and second year, I did tons of calls. And so I did a lot of outbound stuff. And I just started
cold calling, right? You're talking about cold calling pretty much.
Yeah.
Going through the yellow pages, just picking up the phone and seeing, just hoping to get lucky.
Yes. So yeah, there's a lot of lessons there. Actually I closed my biggest commission, probably still one of my biggest commission, is 17,000 commission from the yellow page. I remember one, it was maybe 3 months in, rang the yellow page on the list of cars, like car dealers. One of the directors just basically said, "Life insurance? Yeah, I'm looking for life insurance. Why don't you come over?" And so I drove 40 minutes to their house, not their house, their dealership, right? And when I got there, because 40 minutes away is this place is called Minariwa. It's one of the more rugged place. It's a lot of gangs out there. And when I got there, it was this big white guy, bald, and he's got tats all over him. He's like, "You're the insurance guy?" And then like, I had a meeting, right? Like it was like kind of like, yeah, it was pretty cool. And then I ended up getting that sale. I introduced him to my senior advisor, and then he closed the sale and we split the commission on that.
Wow. So
So,
it should have been 38.
oh no, so 17 was the total revenue. So I
Oh,
split
okay.
50%.
Oh, okay. Okay.
As a junior advisor, that's quite a bit of commission. But yeah, so that was fun. But back to meeting up with Andrew and Chuck. So those were the marketing guys, and they were building the software. They had the twins, Ben and John, as well. So they were engineers at uni, but they love building software. So us, five of us, we just sat down and go, hey, you know what? We've got the software, we've got the marketing. We just need a salesperson. And at the time, I only had 6 months of mortgage experience. But we decided to, you know what? Let's give it a go. Like we're pretty agile. And September 2015, we turned on the internet marketing, and the leads just flooded in like crazy. And so we're like, okay, let's figure out how to close this, like figure out our sales process. So we designed like from scratch. So that was good fun. Yeah.
But it was like you were 26 at the time.
Yeah. 26 at the time.
26 at the time, and you decided to go start your business and join these guys, pretty much form a team together to do this. And now iRefi you guys are one of the top mortgage refinancing companies in New Zealand, correct? Like you said earlier.
So actually there's a ranking system for performance in our industry, and it's called the New Zealand Advisors. And yeah, so we've been top since 2017, top 10 in 2015.
Right.
So that's pretty good results.
So I mean, like, so that's incredible success, right? I mean, you're only 31, but you've already built a firm out of scratch into the top 10 in the industry. So like, you guys are obviously very disruptive, right? And you guys you've done pretty well for yourselves. What were some of the main problems that you faced as a young entrepreneur trying to start your own business?
Yeah, look, I think there's still tons of stuff we need to improve on. I think when we came into the industry, we didn't have the banking background like most traditional mortgage brokers might have. So when you have a bunch of kids come into the industry, and then you start hitting the top 10 rankings, it creates a little bit of like misconception by the veterans in the industry, because like the traditional path is like 10-year banking career. And so I think from like their perspective is like, well, what are you guys doing? Like it doesn't seem legal, like so they like it's not a good perception. So in the beginning, we did start off with just refinancing for like just a few months. And a refinancing is basically taking a client from one bank to another to get them a lower interest rate and get them some cash. So what happens is in our industry, like if you switch banks, the new bank gives you cash. It's kind of like, switching your power bill, switching your phone bill. But very quickly we learned that these kind of clients, if they're just shopping around, they don't last very long. And so that was a big lesson for us. And not only those clients don't last very long in the industry, like it's frowned up on. Like if you are just churning business, like it's not good in any financial industry. If it's like managed funds, insurance, like there's a lot of hoops you need to jump through. So very quickly we learned, like the banks sort of said, hey, look, your marketing's a little bit aggressive. And other brokers were complaining because they didn't like getting the newsletters. They didn't appreciate that, going to their house. So we then started thinking about, okay, actually, what other value can we provide for these clients? So besides getting them a lower interest rate, actually we look at some of the top clients, the people that have 3-5 properties, mum and dad, and you think they're on very high income. They're not. They might be on like 70K. And so I realized, there was one client for me was they were buying their 5th property, like in their mid-30s. And they were earning 60K. Mom was 60K, dad was 70K, and they have 4 kids. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like, how could that level of income like be buying their 5th property? Like my parents, they're in their 50s and they were still paying off their first mortgage. Because what they did was they kept upgrading. But this family is kind of like, well, bought my first home, use the equity, recycle that, buy another one, recycle the equity, buy another one when they can. And so they have set up such a nice retirement path for themselves. So the problem that I saw was, actually 8 out of 10 people don't know that they can do this. And they're too scared. They don't know about it. And they need someone to guide them along. And so instead of just helping people getting a lower interest rate, we started looking at, okay, actually, is there a structure in the mortgage that will help you pay it off faster? And then the third thing that we try to look at is like, okay, what are the kind of like that family? What are they doing differently? What is this family doing differently? What are some of the concepts and ideas that they should learn to be on the path of like the family that's buying their 5th property? So it's kind of understanding the client's goals and objectives long term. Mm-hmm. And most people don't even have that. They don't even think about that.
Yeah, it's like financial intelligence. A lot of this planning ahead stuff, like a lot of people don't even think about it, right? So if you're working with someone who's like our age, like 30s, early 30s, or even late 20s, right, and they're about to buy their first property and they're doing some family planning and so on, what would be the advice you'll give them?
I think first of all, it's just trying to understand their goals. Obviously, like I don't want to shove any like, hey, you must do this sort of thing. But I think it's first understand like, okay, like next 5 years, next 10 years, where do you see yourself financially? And a lot of the time, like they might say, hey, I want to start a family, I want to buy a house. And I think, like depending on what kind of house that you buy and like as your first home is going to change the way whether or not you can buy another one in the future. If you go, hey, look, I want to just retire when I'm 60, like, well, just buy your first property and then let's revisit this in 4 or 5 years time and we'll start investing the equity in your home. Like some people don't need that much. Some people might have aspiration to go, you know what, I want to retire when I'm 40, 45. And then, okay, well, if you want to retire, what's the vehicle? What's your vehicle? Is it shares? Okay, well, how much are you putting in shares? Well, I don't think that's enough, and then, okay, then if it's not enough, then could property be a vehicle? Like, let me show you how the property vehicle works. And simply put, right, like the property vehicle in New Zealand, it's a 7% capital return. So what does 7% translate to? Is like whatever you invest in today, about 12 to 15 years, that capital value will double. So like, let's say if you invested $1 million in a property, you just hold that investment for 12 to 15 years, it's worth $2 million. You sell that property, there's no tax in New Zealand. That's another hack with properties. There's no tax. Now you've got this $1 million, you can pay down your own mortgage with it. So you can imagine like maybe someone in their early 30s, they might buy their own property and then they might buy one investment property. That itself is going to help them pay off that mortgage, their own mortgage, a lot sooner. But imagine if they started doing the third one, doing the fourth one. Mm-hmm. But getting the first one right, first couple right, is very important, because understanding how the bank's calculations work, like the bank is not just going to lend you money because it's, oh yeah, you've got a bit of equity and you've got an income. You have to really understand how that piece works. And that's what we try to help them with. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's a long answer.
No, it's great because a lot of times you only see what's in front of you, right? Like when you're in your 30s, you don't really think about like, what's going to happen 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, right? I don't
Yeah.
think that really even kicks in. I mean, for me, it didn't even really kick in until like you start having kids and you're like, they're getting pretty expensive. My oldest daughter is 10 and she's like taking lessons and then like, I drive them around and then the other two are coming up and it's like, they're getting pretty expensive. And I want a system that automatically generates wealth for me that I don't have to, I don't have to worry too much about. And I think it's all about that, getting that foresight to set that up, which is what you do with your clients.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and properties is just one vehicle, like
Yeah.
I've got clients that I'm getting more into, because I kind of been shifting my niche year to year. Like first year was like refinancing, second year, second property owners, and my third, like fourth and fifth year, like I've really focused on the bigger portfolios, people with 5 properties to 10 properties plus, and just trying to figure out where the value is. Um, and because I get to work with these clients, I get to see exactly how they build their wealth. And these strategies are invaluable for a lot of the clients who are just starting out. And you'll be surprised, right? Like the people with 10 properties, they just love sharing. They just love sharing like, hey, look, because they found something that they believe in and they want to tell other people about it. And so, you're just trying to connect those ideas and the clients and see how the people more experienced, how they can share the experience with the younger people.
But if it's so easy, then why aren't more people doing it? I mean, like it sounds like a lot of people that you work with, like, when you first talk to them, like you said earlier, is like they didn't even think about that as being an option, right? So, I mean, if this is such a awesome vehicle, like why aren't more people doing it?
I think the level of financial literacy is definitely very low, like in general. Look, not like when you buy your first investment property, you're very likely to borrow 100% against that investment. And the average price in New Zealand is over $1 million. And if they just look at their own market, like in Auckland, for example, no one wants to take on another $1 million debt. They're just so focused on far out. Like my 500K property is so hard to pay down. It's like taking me years and years, and it's still like after 10 years, it's still 480K. Like, so most people are scared of that. They don't understand, and they don't see how it can work. And there's a lot of different ways of structuring the mortgage. Say, for example, interest only. That's a very simple concept my mum and dad didn't understand. My mum and dad at their peak of their small business, they generated quite a bit of income, right, from running takeaways. I used to help out after school. I'll be at the counter doing the fish and chips as well. And they had 2 properties back then because they were thinking of. I asked them like, oh, why did you guys invest this into this? Like they bought an apartment and there was like an investment for me and my sister. And then they kept their first home and they bought a new one. So they had 3 houses at the time. But because they're like, okay, you know what? This business is really hard. Like it's a lot of hard work. They decided to sell the business. And because they decided to sell the business, they are scared of keeping all that debt on those investment properties. So they decided to sell that instead. But I revisited those exact figures, right? Like, 10 years later, I revisited them and I go, man, actually, you know what? It's so easy for them just to keep those property even without the business income, because those properties were cash flow positive, but what they couldn't get out of their head was putting them on interest only. Something as simple as that. Putting them on interest only lowers the repayments. And what happens is, as long as it looks after itself, you can just sit on the capital gains. And so, yeah, you'll be surprised. The level of financial literacy is very low for most family. Like if you think about a doctor or a nurse, like they're not going to think about numbers every day,
No,
right?
not
So
right.
you'd be surprised with some of the doctors as well earning 300K, and it's not something that they think about.
Right, right. So if they only decide to put the money into a property and structuring it so that it pretty much like it'll pay off itself, and in fact earn more money in the future because of the increase in property value. Like 10 years down the road, it's going to be like, wow, like all my worries were actually just bad math.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, like I've got this young guy that came to our firm. He's a dentist, earning really good money, right? And he asked us, is like the first thing he's looking for is money to buy a Porsche.
Money to buy a Porsche.
Yeah, like I mean, he deserves it, right? He worked hard and he's earning really good income. And he's like, oh, can I top up on my mum and dad's property to buy a Porsche? Well, he can definitely afford it, but that's something that's going to really change the trajectory of what he's able to do later on.
Oh, you said Porsche, not porch. Porsche as in the car.
Porsche. Yeah, Porsche. Yeah,
okay.
Car. Sorry.
I'm like, they want to buy a porch, and like they're coming to you to buy a porch.
Yeah,
okay.
It's crazy, right? Like, yeah, people don't think about it.
Yeah, because the moment you buy a Porsche, the moment it hits the road, then like half the value is gone, right?
Exactly, 100K down the drain.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. I mean, so let's talk about some of your personal challenges as a young business owner, because you're working with a team of like young entrepreneurs, building this business, and not having a lot of let's say societal experience in the working world, in the corporate world, right? And then, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a young business owner in terms of like making decisions, in terms of working with people, just the people stuff? What were some of the challenges?
I think in the beginning, like all you could focus on is revenue. So what you're trying to do is you got to build up the sales and marketing thing. And that's a massive challenge in itself. Like most businesses, I work with a lot of small business owners, and most small business owners don't have a systematic way of generating business. And what that basically means is, like, for example, if you need to talk to 10 people to get 2 clients, then you need a systematic way of generating the 10 conversations. So I think that was the first challenge, just trying to figure out how to create a sales process that converts. Because marketing was the thing that we did well, and then first problem that we were trying to solve was a sales process, a systematic way of converting the leads.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, it's about teaching other people to do it. Now we've got the training that you need to work on, and sort of I say maybe 2-3 years down the line, like what we had was two small teams doing their own thing, but like we get the same results, but they were doing their own thing. So what happened was the client experience was very different. So what we needed to figure out was how to systemize that throughout the whole company, so that the client experience is the same, the quality of advice that they're getting is the same. So there's different things that we try to implement, like client segmentation. We make sure like the juniors get something that has least variables. The seniors then can work on clients that have the highest variables. Like if someone has a ton of income, a ton of equity, they're looking into the ocean basically. So. And it's really hard for a junior person to help them narrow down their options. So trying to systemize that, like kind of like if you think about it, it's like McDonald's. Anyone can walk in there and make a burger, but if you go into a Chinese takeaway, not anyone can just get a job at the Chinese takeaway cooking chicken chow mein or something. So it's trying to eliminate those variables. So that is always a challenge. I think cash flow is a huge one, because we've had a couple of times in our business where, oh man, like it's so busy, and we just decide to just hire staff. right? And when you hire staff, you have to make that cash flow commitment, even though you're paying them like 50, 60K. It's not much, but it hurts the bottom line. And then what happens is you have to commit to that cash flow. You have to make sure you generate the revenue. So then, there were times where I remember there was 1 month, like we were so scared because like we didn't do as well as we want that month. And then your bank account, as soon as you pay your wages, it just drops like a massive amount. And we really had to think of our like cash flow strategy, and then that lead us to thinking about the hiring system. So sales, marketing, training and development, that's really hard. You can't just get someone and go, hey, look, this is a job that you need to do, and then like expect them to figure it out. You almost have to think about like, okay, well, this is admin, and admin, you got to break it down into four main jobs, and then each of the four main jobs you can break it down again, and that's how you sort of systemize like the way someone works. And yeah, I think hiring is such an important one, because I've had challenges where you hire someone that's like bad for the culture. It's very toxic for the company. It decreases the company morale. They gossip, and it really changes the thinking of the good staff as well. Yeah. So
How do you deal with a toxic person then?
I think,
I mean, like just say, for example, if that person is like super high performer, closing deals left and right, and they're awesome, right? They're awesome at what they do, but they're toxic, like extremely toxic. What would you do?
man, it's so tough. I'm still learning. I got to say, like, I don't have the right solution yet. But the main thing that if first of all, is you have to work on some preventatives. I guess preventative action. So, like, say for example, you have to really define, what is the company trying to achieve. I mean the fluffy stuff, right? But it's important, like the vision and the mission, your core values, and because the core values are our guiding compass of how we do things. And so when you're hiring, then you got to go, okay, well, what's your systematic way of trying to tease out those things that you can figure out that will this person fit in? And so I think that is the first part that you need to get right.
Right. So kind of preventing is like you got to work out so that your body doesn't fall apart. Otherwise, like it's about like, preventing is the best solution, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I guess you have to have some sort of like now this, I think agreements is another important thing that we're quite naive about. Like, our agreements were weak. And so having stronger agreements in place where you can take, like steps and actions for employees that are just not the right fit is very important. Like performance review, or maybe even some sort of review that allows, like, I mean, we've been through that. And so now I'm thinking, okay, well, next time, how do we face this? Is probably not only just performance review. You really need like a quality review, peer review, those kind of things that gives you a way out. Because otherwise you can't really just go fire the person on the spot. He's performing, like he's doing everything that he needs to, but everyone just don't like him.
Right.
You can't just fire a person for that. So it's just trying to think of ways to get out, and the agreement's so important.
It sounds like a lot of the things that, I mean, just listening to you talk and the way you think, like a lot of it's about setting up the systems, setting up things that will help your company, whether it's generating leads, whether it's building a culture, whether it's processes to, deal with these problems or put out fires or prevent fires from ever coming up. It's all about systems to you, it sounds like.
Oh yeah, I definitely believe a system, because This year is a big lesson for us as well. So I mentioned about last year, we're still two high performing teams on a profit sharing model. And yeah, the results were great. And this year we actually, try to, like, there was a big change for me that I implemented was, like, let's systemize this. So each department have their own systems, and everyone in that department has to work in with the same processes. And that's not actually hard, that's not actually easy to pull off. And I definitely didn't think about the details right, because what happened was for 2 quarters we kind of suffered, like we didn't have perform as well as we wanted to. And so the implementation of it, if I had to do it again, was I needed to set up probably the measurements, like really the right measurement for each department, and maybe put a leader earlier in each department to manage those processes. Whereas I thought I could manage all 4, but it doesn't work like that. So yes, systems are the most important thing, because without it, I don't think we can scale. Like, because the next thing I'm thinking is like, okay, well, how do we, like, we've got a good model, and it's profitable. It's good. It's high performing teams. And if we could build high performing teams of 12s and replicate that, like, you need systems.
Mm-hmm. Right. How do you deal with disagreements in the leadership then? Like, because you guys have like what, 5 or 6 founders, right? Everyone's got a different idea, and when you're building out the system, everyone might have a different vision for the system, or even a different vision for the company. How do you sort out, the disagreements within leadership?
You bite them out. there's a short answer. That actually happened, right? Like, in 2017, there were still 5 of us as shareholders, and what happened was, we just have to have those discussions. One of the key things that we didn't do in the beginning of our entrepreneurial journey was the lack of communications. What happened was, like, everyone's just doing their own thing. Everyone's just so busy. Like, we're already working 14 hours a day, and so you lack that communications, and, like, everyone has their own thing that they're like, okay, I'm going to go down this track, I'm going to go down that track. And what you need to do, like what we implemented now, is every week there's a shareholder meeting. Every week, it doesn't matter, we're just going to catch up for breakfast. And then what you need to do is really just like, share your feelings. Like, what are you feeling? Where are you seeing things? What are you seeing wrong? And it's important, because it's almost like a relation, like a marriage. So we didn't have that. And in 2017, we just, everyone was frustrated, because what happened was the software guys, they like to test stuff, and software burns a lot of cash. Software, you can go down like a rabbit hole. I mean, if you read this book called Google Sprints, basically it just talks about how you can, like, validate your software like in 7 days. It sounds easy, but it's really hard to execute. I mean, even Ben and Jon, like, they're genius, they're like boy genius, but to execute that is really hard. So we burn a lot of cash, hiring more developers and trying new things. And what happens is, when you burn cash, it has to come from somewhere. So the salespeople, it was really tough for them, because for sales to keep performing, you have to incentivize them properly. And without that capital to incentivize them, like, salespeople lost motivation. Like, what's the point of working so hard if we're not getting rewarded? And so that was that struggle in the beginning. And 2017, we figured, okay, actually, you know what? The software direction is different, and where the brokerage is heading is different. So we actually went our separate ways, and we split the company into 2. So now the software guys actually work across the road from us, and we still use the software today, and they've built a pretty strong business as well. And I think for the brokerage, for us, is trying to figure out, okay, how do we it's almost like a franchise. I wouldn't call it a franchise, but like we're almost trying to figure out, okay, how do we replicate this, because we know the model works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. So it's basically having that honest conversation, because a lot of times when you don't communicate enough amongst like sounds like at the higher leadership level, if you don't communicate enough, you don't have those people connections, right? And if you're not honest with one another, like a lot of things can go wrong very quickly. Like you said, burning cash, right? Reminds me of what Ray Dalio talks about in his book Principles, right? About that radical transparency with one another.
Yeah.
Like just being honest with one another, having those breakfast meetings, coffees or whatever, and just making sure you're committing to one, like just telling each other your feelings about the direction of the company. And it's about, this type of culture that you built. And at some point you may have, like you said, in your case, you guys went your separate ways just because, it was time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No, like 100%. Like, now we have shareholder meeting and then the leadership meeting, and then you've got the department meetings, and it's just trying to throw everything out there, be more transparent. You got to create a culture, like you said, for that transparency. Like you got to encourage it. You got to say, look, it's all right. Like it's all right to argue in a meeting, and what's more important is to come out with a plan of action.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably more important than anything else. Like we can argue about stuff, complain about stuff, but not do anything about it. And that's something that's important for the team to understand.
Right. And it almost sounds like you really gotta focus on solving the problem and don't take it personal, right? Because it's about problem solving. But my question is, I've been in some companies where they have too many meetings and it's a royal waste of time, right? So like you get meeting yourself to death, right? And pretty much like not getting anything done because everyone's just sitting in the room talking. And so how do you make that balance between like meeting productively and meeting for the sake of meeting?
Yeah. Jammy jams. Like we used to laugh about it when we, there was like a viral video on like startup companies. They always have like, oh, let's have a meeting. Let's have a meeting. Like they meet like every like friggin' 1 hour. To be honest, I'm still learning that. I don't have the right solution. I don't think, but at the moment, I think, we don't just start it. Like, I think it's important that we don't have meetings in the middle of the day. Like we don't just go, hey, Jonathan, let's have a meeting. I think I read it was Ray Dalio's suggestion is if you need something from me, write it down on the list, and then we'll schedule a meeting to do it. So because I think the problem is when you have an idea and you just go like interrupt someone and go, hey, look, should we have a meeting about this? But I think if you're proactive, saying, hey, look, every week we're going to catch up once a week for 1 hour, and it's about sales. This is the agenda. These are the things that we're going to talk about. I think as long as you got an agenda and it's most important thing that people take action from the meetings, then that's going to make that meeting a little bit more productive.
Right.
But just not having the random meetings like during the day because you felt like it, then I think that's probably what you want to avoid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. It's really about like, what you do in the meeting and whether it's planned out and whether it's systematized with an agenda. Right. And yeah. Okay.
Did you hear about the one about Elon Musk? Have you heard of like his meeting? Like
doesn't he have a protocol where it's like you can like cut out as many middlemen as possible and just like email them directly if there's any questions, like you don't have to go through the middle manager or anything, right? Is that what you're talking about?
He said in one of the interviews, like if you're not contributing to the meeting and if you are finding it boring, you can just walk out. And I thought that was like a really cool policy to have.
Yeah. Actually, I heard that one. That's like really cool.
Yeah.
All right.
I haven't implemented it. I haven't tried it myself, but it sounds like an interesting policy.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to be respectful of your time. So if people want to contact you and learn more about what you do, how do we do that, and where do we learn more about you?
You can find me on iRefi.co.nz. My email and my phone number is there. So if you want to invest in Auckland and New Zealand, see what kind of returns you can get, you can get in touch.
All right. So thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it.